Welcome everyone to another episode of Pixel Peak. I'm Bobby Eggins. Kristen? Hello?
What's up, Bobby?
Kristen, are you okay? You look completely different.
Bobby, it's me, JEAN-LUC. You remember from the first 2 episodes?
Is it really you?
Yep, and I'm happy to be back. We've got a special Halloween-themed episode coming for you, starting off with some scary news about esports, Battlefield 5 delays, and Pokemon Go. For your spooky-themed editorial, we've got a reflection on the popular zombies mode that started with Nazi zombies in Call of Duty World at War, and how the series has changed with each COD release. If you still haven't had a heart attack, we have a terrifying review of Forza Horizon 4, one of the scariest games ever made. And to wrap up the Fright Fest, a roundtable discussion on horror games and what makes them good or bad.
So, you're sure you aren't Kristen?
I'm JEAN-LUC Clark, he's Bobby Eggins, and we hope you enjoy your stay here on Pixel Peak.
Lifestyle, apparel, and esports brand 100 Thieves announced last week that it had completed its current round of funding. Included in the list of new investors joining Cleveland Cavaliers owner Dan Gilbert is SV Projects founder Scooter Braun and world-famous rapper Drake. In an announcement on their website, 100 Thieves owner Nadeshot said, "It's been exciting to watch esports become a cultural phenomenon in 2018. I've spent my 10-year career in esports growing the ecosystem, and I'm proud to have Drake and Scooter join as my partners to help take 100 Thieves to new heights. Our top priority is to win world championships, but our ambitions go far beyond competitive gaming." Nadeshot also said that with the help of Drake and Braun, 100 Thieves will look to not only expand its apparel brand, but also further extend its reach into esports and management. This isn't the first time Drake has dipped his toes into the esports world, as he made headlines earlier this year by playing Fortnite with streamer Ninja, rapper Travis Scott, and NFL wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster. Their late-night stream pulled in more than 600,000 concurrent viewers without any promotion, so we can only imagine what his popularity will do for 100 Thieves with proper marketing.
Drake isn't the only celebrity to get in on the esports market, though. Charlotte Hornets owner and NBA superstar Michael Jordan just invested in Axiomatic, the parent company of Team Liquid. Back in 2016, one of Axiomatic's initial investors was one of Jordan's old rivals, Magic Johnson. Bruce Stein, CEO of Axiomatic, told ESPN, "For the purposes of bringing on traditional sports strategy, competitive training, and being able to take best-of-class learning from other sports, it was pretty exciting for us to bring both Magic and Michael together in this group." With Shaq, the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers, Dan Gilbert, and many other traditional sports figures jumping on the esports train, the future seems to lie in competitive gaming.
All is not well in the realm of esports, however. Just this past weekend at the CSGO 2018 tournament in Shanghai, China, player Forsaken from OpTic India was captured on video using and even trying to delete an aimbot. For this rule violation, he received a hefty ban of 5 years by the Esports Integrity Coalition last Tuesday. According to the ESIC, this isn't his first offense. On the same esports team in 2017, he received a 6-month Valve anti-cheat ban while playing in the ESL Indian Premiership, a tournament that OpTic India won. The ESIC investigated that situation as well and determined that he was acting alone because of the cheats only being present on his SSD card, further enforcing their 5-year ban on Forsaken. OpTic India has since disbanded, most likely to distance other players from the scandal.
CD Projekt Red digital marketplace GOG found itself in hot water last week after tweeting out a distasteful joke about PC games using a trans rights hashtag on October 23rd. Hashtag won't be erased picked up traction on social media after the New York Times reported a leaked memo from the Trump administration. The memo said the Department of Health and Human Services was looking to limit the definition of sex under Title IX of the Education Amendments Act of 1972. The New York Times article sent up some red flags motivating people to take to social media or organizations in person, like the group that gathered in New York City's Washington Square to protest the memo. GOG entered itself into the situation by tweeting, "PC games hashtag won't be erased on our watch." Yeah, how's that for some use of hashtags? Before taking it down the next morning. In a statement on Twitter, the company said, "Yesterday we posted a tweet containing a trending hashtag as a pun. The tweet was neither intended as a malicious attack nor as a comment to the ongoing social debate. GOG should focus only on games. We acknowledge that and we commend to it. Considering this is the third time that CDPR found itself embroiled in a scandal of this nature since the summer, it might be time to get its social media teams some sensitivity training.
The long-awaited name-changing feature came to PS4 last week, but with it came some pretty concerning caveats. When changing their names, players are prompted with a warning of sorts, saying that not all games support online ID changes. What this means for players is that in the event that they do change their names, they might lose access to certain downloaded content, including things they may have already paid for. Users may also lose progress in their games regarding save data, places on leaderboards, and progress towards trophies. On top of that, the warnings say that some games and apps just might not work properly at all, both online and off. The first name change on PS4 is free, but players are going to have to weigh that against losing access to some of their games. So if you're dying to switch that name you thought of in middle school, it might be worth it. But there's definitely some risk involved, so be sure to give it some thought first.
DICE gave players a look at a release timeline for Battlefield 5 last week, and to the surprise of many, it showed that the game's Battle Royale mode, Firestorm, wouldn't be coming to the game until March of 2019. That's almost 4 months after release. The developer will roll out new content and modes monthly until then to tide people over, but this seems like more of a delay than a strategy from DICE. With the overwhelming popularity of the Battle Royale genre in 2018, it's hard to believe that they wouldn't be releasing Firestorm on launch if they could. It looks like this just might not be ready yet. This announcement comes after Battlefield 5 was already delayed from its original October release date. Battlefield 5 has not had the easiest run leading up to launch. An August report from analyst Doug Kreutz said that, at the time, the game's pre-orders were as much as 85% behind direct competitor Call of Duty Black Ops 4.
It's only been 2 months since Insomniac's Spider-Man saw release exclusively on the PlayStation 4, and it's already experienced all-time highs in the industry. As of last Tuesday, Mac Piscatella from NPD, a company that tracks game sales, reported that Insomniac's Spider-Man had sold more than any PlayStation exclusive in history and made its way in the top 10 most successful launches on any PlayStation platform. The title even boosted PS4 sales enough to set a September sales record and performed 37% better than every Spider-Man game published by Activision combined. It also became the strongest launch title ever on PS4, with 3.3 million copies sold in the first 3 days, topping God of War's record of 3.1 million. Whether you're a webhead or a web hater, this has been the facts without J. Jonah Jameson.
In additional positive sales, Forza Horizon 4 posted the best launch sales in the series' storied 13-year-long run. Market researcher the NPD Group reported that the game made more money between September 2nd and October 6th than any other Forza game had previously in its first month. This might come as a surprise to some, as Forza Horizon 4 is available to play without purchase for those that subscribe to Xbox's Game Pass service, but it seems that players were willing to pony up regardless. According to the NPD Group, this is the best launch on any racing game on Xbox ever, so congratulations to Playground Games.
On a more whimsical note, the Florida-based Catholic evangelical group Fundación Ramón Pane released a clone of Pokemon Go last week called Follow JC Go. Players can chase down and build a team of Catholic saints. The game focuses less on catching, fighting, and evolving monsters, and more on answering philosophical questions. Progression in the game is instead based on eating, drinking, and praying. The church wasn't directly involved in the development, but apparently the Pope is on board. In an interview with Catholic newspaper Crux Now, Executive Director of Fundación Ramón Pane, Ricardo Grasona, said, Francis is not a very technological person, but he was in awe. He understood the idea, what we were trying to do. Combine technology with evangelicalization. Don't expect this game to take the nation by storm like Pokemon Go did in 2016, but if players want to check it out, the game is available on both iOS and Android. However, the game is only currently available in Spanish, but English, Portuguese, and Italian versions are coming soon.
And from the clone, we move to the original. For those that haven't been following Pokemon Go lately, a series of videos from the Pokemon Company have been dropping details about the exclusive Pokemon, Melton. In a video that was published last Tuesday, Professor Oak and Professor Willow say that Melton can be transferred into Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu or Let's Go Eevee, but they also say players will be able to evolve Melton into Melmetal, an 8-foot swole version of Melton. That's right, Melton will be the first mythical Pokemon to evolve in the series' 22-year history. To get Melton, special research quests that will be issued this winter will reward players with a mystery box, an item somehow tied to the appearance of Melton. So, for players who want a complete Pokédex, they'll need to grind those special research quests for the 400 Melton candles required for evolution when they're home for the holidays.
Zombies mode in Call of Duty has gotten more and more popular with each release. The most recent iteration in Black Ops 4 is much more than simply killing zombies and repairing barricades. Let's hand it over to JEAN-LUC to learn more about how the beloved series has lost its roots, for better or worse.
Ooh, zombies. Ooh.
2018 and the release of Black Ops 4 marked the 10th anniversary of Call of Duty World at War's Nazi zombie mode. When World at War first released, players that finished the game's campaign were greeted by an unsettling concrete bunker after the credits rolled. There were rundown windows and blown out walls all over the area, which were shoddily covered in wooden planks that were hammered on, but definitely couldn't do much in the event of gunfire. The building consists of 2 floors that looked out over an abyssal wasteland as far as the eye could see. After a minute or two of familiarizing themselves with the area, players might have noticed a knocking noise. An investigation would have taken them to one of the windows, which was being ripped open by a few deformed, undead Nazi soldiers, explaining why the barricades would be useless against bullets. Their uniforms were tattered, but their armband remained vibrantly red, and their eyes glowed bright yellow, like headlights. Only equipped with an M1911 pistol and a knife, players fought off Hitler's undead soldiers for as long as they could, earning points for with every kill or window rebuild. Those points would allow them to purchase new weapons to help them survive longer during Nacht der Untoten, or Night of the Undead. It was a horrifying experience during which players always had to watch their backs, regardless of whether or not they had a full squad. Sometimes, the zombies would scream at the top of their lungs. Other times, they would creep up from behind and down players before they could realize what was happening. After the 6th round, the zombies ditched their slow stumble and began sprinting at the survivors. It all made for a tense, terrifying addition to an already brutal World War II game. As DLC maps came out, Nazi zombies got increasingly complex. Maps became bigger and more intricate, and players got more options to fight back against the hordes of the undead, like Perca-Colas that would provide players with new abilities, or the Pack-a-Punch machine, which would upgrade weapons for optimized zombie killing. In Black Ops 1, though, zombies really started to switch it up. The more serious tone of the original Zombies maps was cast aside in favor of a silly level called 5, in which President John F. Kennedy fought alongside Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara, Richard Nixon, and Fidel Castro. 5 took place inside of the Pentagon and had players fighting in tight corridors all over the building. From there, zombies saw players aiming to survive in increasingly absurd locations like the Himalayan mountains, on the moon, and a Siberian outpost leading to a square-off with Night of the Undead director George Romero. Treyarch was starting to have more fun with zombies, but it began to lose touch with that core sense of fear and dismay that the original Nazi zombies brought to the table. Now, enter Call of Duty Black Ops 4. The series has long since ditched the Nazi zombies branding and now just goes by zombies. The maps have gotten increasingly zany as time has gone on, and players that skip games between then and now might find themselves completely bewildered by the new mechanics. Zombies used to just be about survival. It was a horde mode with some really scary looking monsters and rooms that players could slowly unlock to find new weapons, but at the cost of creating new paths and areas to get attacked from. Now, there are classes that players can make. Everyone can set themselves up with perks, an ultimate ability, and a different starting weapon. Some maps take it so far that it makes Monster Hunter games seem straightforward by comparison. There's also a progression system that unlocks new guns for players as well. These guns can always be bought off the wall, but they can be customized to come with new attachments and camos after they've been unlocked by leveling up. In Black Ops 3, Zombies maps also began having end goals to them. They became short stories for players to work their ways through, referred to as nightmares. In these nightmares, characters banter back and forth as they run and gun for their lives in places like Alcatraz, an ancient arena, and the Titanic, as weird as it sounds. Time travel has also seemingly become a part of Zombies now. The stories are intricately woven together, but for anyone that hasn't been paying attention for the full decade, very little of it makes sense. Trying to piece them together in the middle of an endless zombie horde isn't easy either. When World at War's Nacht der Untoten first launched, it was horrifying. It was a completely new concept, not only to Call of Duty, but to the first-person shooter genre moreover. And regardless of whether the zombies were sneaking up or running full speed ahead and screaming, it was consistently unsettling. In Black Ops 4, zombies is too confusing to be scary. The levels are largely pretty novel, and they've become something more akin to labyrinths than holdout areas. Players have to stay on the move and complete objectives with the goal of completing some story that they have been thrust into. Eerie ambience has been replaced with corny one-liners and nonsensical exposition. Gone are the days of grinding for a new weapon and praying for a good pull in the mystery box. Players can choose multiple weapons to bring in with them from the get-go, and can always rely on ultimate abilities and automatically replenishing grenades to shred zombies at all levels. It's not a bad experience by any means, but it seems to have strayed from the original formula that made zombies so cool to begin with. It's too busy to be scary now. Bring back the scary Treyarch. Speaking of scary, let's send it to reviewer Zach Clayton to find out his thoughts on Forza Horizon 4.
I've got the need to review Forza Horizon 4. Let's pull up to the starting line and get this review going. Car gurus and racing lovers gather around, for Playground Games has given us the latest and greatest in their beloved open-world racing franchise, Forza Horizon. This release is sure to capture some hearts with all it has to offer, so strap yourselves in, start your engines, and let's get this show on the road. Forza Horizon 4 sends us into the beautiful British countryside with Edinburgh as the map's central city. The open environment is quite spacious but not huge, and where it lacks in horizontal expansion it makes up for with verticality. Players can go from driving through a flat township to jumping off rugged mountains to avoiding trees in a dense forest. The world has a good variety of scenery that helps to keep things fresh for the player. The fresh factor is also backed up by Horizon's new season system, which always adds a different feel to the environment and the cars. A lovely relaxing summer road may turn into a screaming death trap during the winter as your car loses all sense of grip and careens off the side of a hill into a tree. Or you may find a river you like to splash in has turned to ice. But the most beautiful is when autumn comes around and the leaves begin to change colors. The season system functions on a weekly clock, meaning that one season lasts 1 week, and it'll be about a month until your favorite season rolls in again. Players aren't locked into the seasons for their racing events, however, as they have the option to choose the season, the time of day, weather, and a couple other settings if they set up their own event blueprint. Racing blueprints allow you to configure your own settings for an already set race course. It allows you to define which class of cars can race, weather, seasons, number of laps, car themes, and a few other things as well. In a recent update, the route creator has also been introduced. This feature lets players create their own race route by having them drive the roads they want and placing checkpoints along the way. As far as racing goes, there are plenty of options. You've got road racing, rally racing, cross-country tours, perhaps not so legal street races, and showcase events. There's also the option to perform as a stunt driver for a movie production crew, which can put you in some pretty sweet rides. The showcase events are some of the coolest events to play, as they'll pit you against planes, trains, and automobiles of different calibers. My favorite showcase was by far the Halo experience, where you race in an M12S Warthog and drive alongside a Pelican, the transport ship, not the bird. Being such a fanboy for Halo, this put a huge grin on my face, and what's even better, the Warthog is available for purchase as a regular vehicle. Speaking of cars, Forza Horizon 4 offers a gigantic selection, more than 450 cars, I counted. You've got trucks, jeeps, ATVs, rally cars, hypercars, all sorts of cars available for customization where you can get some pretty interesting results. There's no shortage of options for you to choose from, and if you get bored of one, just move on to the next. Most cars feel unique, though some are similar, which is to be expected from a roster featuring similar cars, but not so similar it's boring. If you want those cooler hypercars, you better be saving all your winnings though, because they're going to cost you a pretty penny. A couple million pennies, in fact. Collecting credits, cars, and other accessory items is made a bit easier through the use of wheel spins and super wheel spins. These wheel spins are basically a lottery machine that give players the chance to win huge lumps of credits, a car, which could be crappy or legendary, or accessories like horns and emotes. Players can get wheel spins from leveling up, completing challenges, or buying some houses. That's right, I said buying houses. There are a couple of estates on the map available for purchase, like the Edinburgh Castle, to be used as a base of operations for the player. They don't come cheap though, you'll be paying from just a couple $100,000 to a couple million credits for a home. The benefit and incentive to buying these houses is the player can get things like 10 super wheel spins and an Alfa Romeo P3 from the Edinburgh Castle, or perks like DJs playing skill songs at random times, which help earn skill points. Skill points are used to give your car boosts, to earning credits, and more skill points. Players may also invest in a business which can help them rake in a bit of extra cash to reach those top tier cars. A neat feature returning is barn finds. The player will get a rumor about a barn in the middle of a field or forest occasionally, and if they find it, they'll get to take and refurbish the car that's inside. It's a great way to get some epic and classic cars, which players can keep or sell at the auction house if they don't fancy it. If you don't feel like taking your car all throughout a forest or up the side of a mountain, or perhaps you just want to check out the scenery or get a nice pic of your car, players can enter the drone mode. Drone mode, as the name implies, lets you pilot a quadcopter, which you can use to scout an area and get some scenic pictures. Players will share their world with a handful of other players and don't need to worry about someone wrecking their freshly painted Sunday drive car, as the game employs a ghosting mechanic for when you get too close to other players. This way you can all enjoy the countryside together. Forza Horizon 4 looks great, so you'll want to take a moment to chill and have a look about. The game does have to perform with some hardware limitations, but it still manages to look pretty darn good. To accompany your visual experience, the game has created an outstanding soundtrack. There are 6 radio stations for players to choose from, including Horizon Pulse, which plays dance music and, in my opinion, the proper music for the game, Bass Arena, which plays EDM style music, Block Party, which plays more hip-hop style music, Horizon XS, which plays rock style music, Hospital, which seems to be a drum and bass type station, and last but not least, Timeless, which plays timeless classical music and also plays a piece of music from Halo 5. So yeah, it's kinda cool. Well, as we come around to the final straight, I'd like to sum up our review. Forza Horizon 4 offers a fun experience to keep longtime fans satisfied and bring in newcomers. Playground Games throws together a beautiful landscape with some darn good music, a neat new season system, and a whole heck of a lot of good looking cars. Well, this has been my review of Forza Horizon 4, and I'd say it's a great game. Thanks for watching. Crossing the finish line ahead of the pack, Forza Horizon 4 is a great game. To close, I'll send it to our roundtable discussion about horror games, what makes them scary, and which ones rise above the rest.
Well, it's that time of year again where horror movies are the big thing, and we decided to get together and talk about some horror games. We're joined with Walker Peters, Tanner Mazzell, and my co-host JEAN-LUC. So, what's your guys' favorite horror game?
I'm going to have to start with Pathologic. It's a small 2005 indie horror game by a Russian studio, and what's great about Pathologic is, by all accounts, it is a garbage game, but they nail the atmosphere so well that none of that matters. The game's still great from a horror standpoint, and I believe that's really the most important aspect in a horror game, atmosphere.
So what about it, gives it that atmosphere?
It's kind of hard to describe, but everything just has this sense of uncanniness, as in the Uncanny Valley. You get the sense that something's wrong, you're not entirely sure what it is, and I don't want to go into too much detail about the game, I'd be here all day, but everything just sort of fits together even when it shouldn't, and produces a great horror experience. What about you?
As for me, honestly, the greatest horror game that I've experienced is PT. It's a short story, it stands alone as its own thing, and it was revolutionary to how horror games were constructed after it came out. Just the way that it played on the mechanics of turning around and sitting still, triggering a jump scare, it just plays on the old movies so well, and how you progress through it, how it's an endless loop. And if you don't solve the puzzles every time that you run through it, and it just keeps continuing, as if you don't solve the puzzles, just creates this math, it's paranoia, and just really gets down to the core for me. But what about you, JEAN-LUC?
See, that's the thing too, is just full transparency. I'm not really a big horror game person, but I think to Walker's point earlier, the idea of just things not fit in, I think a fond memory that I can look back to was my freshman year of college when I played Grim Fandango. And now it's not necessarily a horror spooky game, but I think Double Fine really captured sort of that spirit of sort of Latin culture, from a Hallows, Dia de los Muertos perspective, and creating a story where it kind of pulls on those things that you think but in more, I guess, interesting capacities. And I think horror in a lot of ways goes on playing with those expectations. I guess that's a fair point.
Yeah, I do love how some games are completely atmosphere. You mentioned PT. I actually saw a playthrough of it for one of my classes here, And watching that made me so unnerved, not only because there was nothing I could do, but I could just tell it's right around the corner, something's gonna happen, and that feeling of dread, that feeling of there's nothing I can do to stop this. I think a lot of horror games use that to their best effect. I am gonna derail a second here because my actual favorite mechanic in horror games is having to survive, having to manage your resources, having to make sure you're at a safe place, stuff like that.
I want to tie into that. I believe one of the most crucial elements in horror games is a sense of helplessness. It doesn't have to be complete helplessness. Dead Space, you've got a weapon, you've got armor, but you know it's not good enough. I think that's a really key element in horrors, the idea that whatever you can do, it's not enough.
I absolutely agree. So like something like Lollipop Chainsaw, which was like an action beat 'em up that came out a couple years ago. Sure, it's during a zombie apocalypse, but you're playing this cheerleader who has a chainsaw as big as she is. You don't feel helpless at all. It's not a horror game. It's a funny romp through this zombie-infested town.
I feel it can be a difficult distinction to make, especially with all the survival horror out there. Sometimes it's more about the survival and action than it is about the horror. Of course, you've got some games where the survival takes so much priority over the action.
I think, to that point of sort of, things may not be what they seem. I think the idea of like playing with those expectations and maybe it is not what it's gonna be. So for instance, I love Until Dawn, right? And it kind of plays on the tropes of it's a high school slasher film, set in a cabin in the middle of the winter, like nowhere. But you're still going through and there's still, Wendigos and there's still, people are dying should you choose to save them or kill them. But, it's playing with the whole, remember, it's going back to like those 90s era slasher, films and respecting the legacy of that, which I thought was pretty fascinating.
Horror is definitely an incredibly diverse genre within itself. You've got your classic slasher horror, you've got more surrealist horror or psychological horror that focuses more on the player or viewer themselves.
You've got body horror, like The Human Centipede.
Just something that invokes a visceral reaction within the player,
Yeah, there are games that play on that. I think that Resident Evil 7 definitely plays in both aspects of disturbing imagery or disgusting scenes, and that idea you mentioned earlier about helplessness. You have all these tools at your disposal in Resident Evil 7, but like when you get into the boss battles, like it feels like you're doing nothing to them, when normally, like if you would take a chainsaw to someone's shoulder, like you would be having some kind of effect. Yeah,
that actually reminds me, I played Resident Evil, like the very first one, once when I was young. And I was not a good shot back then, so I kind of squandered all my bullets, and I was going, why can't I beat this level?
Well, don't worry, the 2 remake is coming out next year, so, plenty of time for all of us to get ready, sharpen up our crosshairs and, I guess, get back to the mayhem.
I believe 1 will be on the PlayStation Classic as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That you would be correct.
And it plays on that survival horror that you like so much.
Resident Evil is definitely a defining game for the genre.
I think we're running out of time, so we'll just leave you with make sure to follow our Twitter and Instagram at PixelPeakAppTV and follow AppTV's Facebook and YouTube pages. And thanks guys so much for coming over and having a chat with us.
No problem.